Hello, this is Tamara Toy, and I'm doing my week of review from the weather observations that I took for Unit 4. My weather reporting station is located at Airport Way and Cal Street in Fairbanks, Alaska. I took my weather observations from January 31st to February 4th, 2017, and I got my weather data from the National Weather Service reporting out of Fairbanks International Airport. On January 31st at 1:30 p.m., I recorded a temperature of 11.4, which was also the maximum temperature for that day, and I recorded a low of minus 9.2. On February 1st at 12:30 p.m., I recorded a temperature of 3.2 with a max of 8 and a low of minus 9.7. On February 2nd at 2:30, I recorded a temperature of 5.3. That day I had a maximum of 13.8 and a low of minus 9.3. On February 3rd, I recorded 11.3, which was also the maximum temperature, with a low of minus 5.2. And on February 4th, I recorded a temperature of 8.5 at 2:30 p.m. 9.5 was the maximum for that day, and I recorded a low of minus 10.9. My temperatures are seasonal and fairly consistent with the National Weather Service. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that the difference is the fact that mine were a little bit warmer, maybe because of my weather station being in a more urban setting with more concrete and buildings to retain heat, whereas the National Weather Service is out at the airport, which is, more open, not as much to help hold the heat in. For my barometric pressure, on January 31st, I recorded 10,033 millibars. On February 1st, I recorded 1,046. February 2nd, I showed 1,043. February 3rd, 1,036 millibars. And on February 4th, I recorded 1,026 millibars. I would say that my readings are fairly consistent, though I am not sure why they are like in advance of what the National Weather Service shows. Whenever I took my weather observations, I always went to the weather.gov, and the barometric pressure there was always within a tenth of an inch of what I was when going by inches. It was within a tenth of an inch. So I'm really rather puzzled by this. So when we look at the weather for the week, on January 31st, we have a low with a low front and a stationary front over South Central. We have high pressure out here over Southwest, as well as over Canada. And you can see the low up here with a low front, a cold front and a warm front. A little bit of a ridge right here. Snow out over the, from Nome up to like towards Barrow. And this would be fairly consistent with the observations that day, as on the 31st, I observed cirrostratus clouds and no wind. So that would be consistent. On February 1st, we have high pressure that's built in across the state into Western Canada. There is a low down here right off the coast of South Central with the stationary front down across the Panhandle. All this, if it is consistent, on February 1st, at the time that I took my observation, there was no clouds and no wind, which is consistent with high pressure. I did see clouds earlier and later in the day, but at the time of my observation, it was severe clear. On February 2nd, it's fairly much the same story as far as high high pressure. There's a little snow and fog up on the northern coast, and a little bit of snow, light snow down here out the Aleutian chain. And that day I reported no clouds and no wind. On February 3rd, it's pretty much a carbon copy of the second. We have high pressure across the state, so except with rain out the Aleutian chain, and there's a low sitting down here. We got a pretty good pressure gradient here, especially in front of the secluded front right here. And that's consistent on the 3rd, no winds and no clouds. I believe on that day, morning and evening, I saw a few clouds around, but at the time of observation at 2:15, there was no clouds. On February 4th, the high pressure is kind of starting to break up. It's moving off to the north. The low down here is a lower pressure, and then this is a pretty tight pressure gradient from this low to the high pressure here, bringing rain and fog out the Aleutian chain. When it comes to the visible, infrared, and water vapor maps, I would say they are all fairly consistent with the observations I took on that day. Here, about right in there, we had cirrostratus covered, I would say, about a quarter of the sky. So that would look like that would be fairly consistent to me. If they are cirrostratus, they're rather high clouds. So they'd be high and cold. And on the water vapor, it felt that day a little bit more humid than normal. I'm going to go on a limb and say because of the cloud cover, maybe. So I would say that would fit. And this is a picture from the 31st, the only day that we had I showed any cloud cover. This is the only clouds. This is looking off to the south and the southwest, and looking overhead into the north and northeast, northwest. It was all just blue sky, not a cloud. So I would say that was a quarter to half cloud cover. That was the only cloud cover of the week. So that would conclude my report on my weather observations for the week of January 31st to February 4th. I would say overall, I haven't really struggled with any of the maps or as far as understanding them. The television map where they're all on overlay gets a little confusing. What's water vapor? What's clouds? Yeah, I say a little in a gray area on that one. But otherwise, I actually kind of enjoyed looking at the maps and figuring it all out. So thank you for watching if anybody does. I know this one's been posted late due to some family circumstances, but hopefully whoever watches it will enjoy it. Thank you and have a good night.